Hey, do you think you can see us over here? I don't think so. I feel kind of unsafe though, I'm not sure. What are you guys talking about? This is super safe, we're up high, he can't do nothing. What do you think?
Hey, you guys! Hey! Hey up there! Are you coming down so I can shoot you? Come on, I want to shoot you. Come on, just do it once, just once. Come on, please, come on. Just once. Today, on this episode for Star Wars Legion, the rules, we are going to be talking about terrain and cover. Hello there, Board Game Maniacs, and thanks for joining me for another rules video for this series of Star Wars Legion by Fantasy Flight Games. If you've been following along, I hope you're enjoying this rules series, and the main reason why I'm creating this rules series is because, number one, I want to create a database for anybody who is wanting to play the game or is learning to play the game, that these videos will help everybody in learning the basic rules to get started a lot faster. Number two, it's so that I can learn the rules a lot better. Previously, we had a theme month of Star Wars Legion on our channel, and we did seem to make a couple of rules mistakes in the videos, but that was expected, and it kind of was on purpose because it's leading up to these videos for rules for Star Wars Legion. And that's what we're doing. Now, I want to give a shout out to Richard Osborne. He's been helping me out with the last two videos for this, and he's a great resource. He's a veteran player, and I've been learning from him as well as reading the book and everything. So just thank you again, Richard Osborne, for doing that. I very much appreciate it. And speaking of rule books, all of these rules videos are based onto this rules reference version 1.6.1, and it was effective February 28th of 2020. So everybody's on the same page. When these videos are all released, there may be a new rule set, but again, just be aware that this is the book that we are going off of for the rules. What I plan on doing for this series, or this episode I should say, again, we're talking about cover and terrain. If at any point during this video I explain something incorrectly, please timestamp the video, refer to the page number in that specific rule book that I showed you previously, and give me an explanation, just so everybody who watches these or are following these videos is going to learn along with us, including myself. And also to mention too as well is that if I missed any kind of rules regarding cover and terrain in this video, comment down below and let me know. Say like, you should have possibly talked about this because it's very important or whatever, and then just give a brief explanation. Again, this is just creating a video database so that everybody is going to know how to play the game after watching these videos, and they're going to feel confident enough to start playing the game. And for all you veterans out there that, you know, I know the rules, it don't hurt just to brush up onto them too as well. So let's go on with the show, shall we? Before you, just have a couple of examples of what can be used into the game. You could use a piece of wood, you can make your own custom terrain, which I did here, but there's so many things that you can add to make your gameplay experience more enjoyable. And again, the more terrain, in my own personal opinion, the better off I like. I love the board when it's full of terrain, but you don't want to have so much that you can't do any moving or anything, because it can get very frustrating for both players. So just be aware of that. The gaming surface that is played in Star Wars Legion for a standard 800 point game is a 6 feet long by 3 feet wide. Now, you can also play a skirmish game, which is 3 feet wide by 3 feet long, so it's a perfect square. And for the purpose of this video, we're only going to be kind of talking about 800 points and the standard game. Now, whether it's 800 points or 500 points for a skirmish game, it don't really matter because all of the cover works the same, all of the terrain works the same too as well. And on top of that, let's just go ahead with it. It's not going to be that much of a long video, I don't think, but the way I ramble sometimes, who knows, right? All right, so anyhow, on page 8 of the rule book, it has a heading called Additional Terrain Rules, and it goes on from there. It just explains all the different things in that, so it's really good to start reading about terrain and everything starting on page 8. And for the purpose of Star Wars Legion, all it pretty matters is when you have the game set up and you're playing the 2-player game, or even if you're playing like a game where it's 2 against 2, what have you, what you want to discuss is the terrain, and whether it's like difficult terrain, open terrain, and so on. I'll explain more of this as we go along, and the types of cover that things will give you during the game. And once everybody is on the same page, and they both, or all of you agree onto the types of terrain, it's going to make things a little easier when it comes into effect for shooting and blocking and cover and so on and so forth. When you're going to play the game, what's good to do is discuss with your player, like I said, and just talk about briefly for each piece of terrain that's on the board, so that you agree upon like the properties of it, like what kind of terrain it is, and how much cover it gives you. Even like the height of your terrain too well is really good to discuss, so everybody's onto the same straight and narrow before you even start rolling dice and destroying some of the miniatures that are on the board. It's very important for that, and like things that will affect it during the game for terrain. Again, I'm talking specifically about the types of terrain, not the cover. We're going to touch on the cover later on in this video, but right now we're just talking about a little bit more about the terrain and everything. So the size of the terrain, the type of terrain is going to all impact how your trooper units move, how your vehicle units move onto them too as well, and it'll also determine about how you climb or clamber onto terrain pieces too as well. So just it's all kind of brings together, so it makes more of a smooth game. And my whole point of this first part that I'm trying to get out is when you're playing the game, just communicate with the other player or players and talk to them and say like, hey, this is hardcover, this here is difficult terrain, this is open terrain, and so on and so on and so on, just to make things so everybody goes over by smoothly and everybody enjoys the game even more, so there's not as many arguments. For terrain, before we go on, let's talk about height, because height has a very, very significant part to play in when you're determining about terrain and so forth. So on page 45 in the rule book, a section that says height. I'm going to read this right out of the book first. So height is the vertical measurement of objects on a battlefield. An object's height is measured by using range ruler. And the range rulers are these sort of things. And again, you have 4 segments. This is only one segment, but you just attach them all together. And we'll go over tools and tokens that in another video, but just be aware, this is the type of ruler you're going to use when you determine the height of an object, where there's going to be a hill, a building, or even something as simple as a tree, or like a canister, what have you. To measure an object's height, a player places the end of the range ruler flat on the battlefield surface as close to the object as possible. The range ruler should be oriented vertically, which means sitting straight up. The segment of the range ruler that the top of the object is equal to the object's height. So pretty much, just to show you here, so this hill, I have the troopers, the rebel troopers are going to go up here, but you want to know about how high the hill is and if they can climb or clamber. So I'm going to take my range ruler and put it here. So this here is the one section. You see, I'm just going to go up a little bit to show you the end of it. So it's right there. Well, right there actually, because this fits inside of it, of the other range ruler. So I'm going to hold it up. And this here is a range 1. It's under range 1, so therefore the object of this is going to be a range 1. Now if we look at the hill in the background, it is bigger, but as well, if you hold it up, it's still within that parameter of the range 1, so therefore these 2 hills, even though this one's bigger than that one, they are classified as a range 1 or a height 1 object or height 1 terrain. Here's another example. So this is one of the huge redwood trees that I did build, and I showed the build onto it. You can check it out if you're interested in wanting to know how to build trees like this. But in either case, we're going to check the height of this one. So the height of this one, I got my range ruler, but now I added 2 segments, a black one and a red one. Now I just painted them. You can leave them in gray, it's up to you. But just so you can maybe see it on camera a little better. So this is on the base as close as it can. Now this tree, it's cut off. It is range 1. It's above range 1. So therefore this here is a range 2 object, or this terrain piece is range 2. Now, I'm just going to read the book specifically about if it's bigger and so forth, like a range 2. So, still on page 45, if the top of the object meets the line between 2 range ruler segments without crossing that line, that object's height is equal to the lower range segment that the line separates. Otherwise, the height of the object is equal to the higher range segment that the line separates. Some terrain may have multiple surfaces at various heights. When determining the height of the surface for the purpose of climbing or clambering, a player measures from the surface their miniatures are on to the surface of those miniatures are climbing or clambering to. And I'll explain that a little bit more now, but first off, this tree, like I said, it's here, so it's not reaching the top of this range ruler, which is off camera, but it's not ending right exactly at the line here where the 2 range rulers are connected. If by chance, hypothetically, I'm just going to move this camera up just a little bit, just say that the tree reached right here. So you can see here, it stops right at this line. Well then, it is considered a height 1 object. But from where this here is not there, it's not reaching there, it's above that, so it's continuing on to the second range ruler. This is a height 2 object, and that's what that means. If we refer back to that last statement that I said about some terrain may have multiple surfaces at various heights, you can look here at this terrain. So this has varying heights, so it has a lower level then a higher level. Now, my rebels want to not climb here, they want to get up on top of this one. So again, if you hold it, it is still within the range 1. So this object, both of them, like I said before, is at height 1. But in some circumstances, if this hill was higher than a range 1 and you wanted to get up here, you are going to have to consider, for climbing or clambering, you're going to have to consider the highest one of where your miniatures want to get. So you go from where your miniatures are starting off to where your miniatures end up going at the end of their climb or clamber. I want to talk to you just about a couple of keywords here that I did mention about climb and clamber. Now, we are not going over actions and keywords specifically in this video, but just it kind of ties hand in hand for this terrain video and cover video. So I just want to read a couple of things. So when I talk about climb is moving up terrain. It takes 2 actions. So if they have the climb ability, it could possibly help them. But if they don't have the climb ability, for them to climb, so again, this is still, they want to climb up here. So it's going to take them 2 actions to climb up. Or for this instance, if they are getting up at the very top of the of here, like I said, I'm just going to move the camera all the way up there, then it's going to take 2 actions for the climb. Now, the Rebel Troopers, they don't have any special keywords besides nimble on their card, and I'm not going to discuss nimble because it got nothing really to do with climb or clamber for this. Now for clamber, C-L-A-M-B-E-R, moving up terrain takes 1 action, but each mini in the unit rolls a white defense die and suffers a wound on a shield. So you have options. You can say, okay, well, I want to get up here from down there So what I'm going to do, there we go, that's a little better. I want to get up here from down here. And obviously you're going to use your commander to do this with. But the thing is on your turn when you activate, you could say, okay, I'm climbing. I go up here, that's my 2 actions, I'm done. And then you would take your miniatures and you would put them onto it. You will make sure that they are all together properly. My brain is kind of melting right now for that specific word. Unit coherency, that's it. Then you would make these all unit coherency according to the rules. And we're going to discuss all this in another video too as well for unit coherency and so on. But that would be a climb action. 2 actions for the climb. Now, if you want to do a clamor, then for each individual miniature, you would move them up, and then you would roll a white die. And if you got the shield icon onto the defense die, your miniature is going to take a wound. So pretty much if you say, yeah, well, I want to get up here because I don't want to shoot because I'm going to have shots, I'm going to have line of sight and be able to hit somebody. So I'm moving him up. I'm going to move them. Like, this is just as an example for clamber. So you move these all up here, you know, keep them in unit coherency, and all of them can fit onto this elevated base, so they're fine. Then what you would do there, then you would have to roll a die for each miniature. So I managed to move all of them up there, so that's 2, 4, 5, 6. So you would take 6 white defense dice, and you would roll it. And for every shield you get, you are going to take a wound. And as we all know, with these ones here, with the Rebel Troopers, they only have 1 wound each. So potentially, if you roll really bad with your white die, you could wipe out your whole squad by trying to do a clamor. And that could be a bad thing, really bad, because it means that you fall off and you crack your head or something and you're out of the game completely. Talking more about terrain, now that was just an example for climbing and clamoring and so on, but as I said before, when you are setting up the game, you're going to discuss with your other player to find out what is classified as the different types of terrain types and for cover and everything. So there's examples here. So terrain, there's difficult terrain, there's impassable terrain, and there's area terrain. Now, impassable terrain and difficult terrain kind of fall into the same area, same category of the area terrain. It's just a different one. Now, we're on page 8, and still, it gives a little bit of different breakdown, such as your open terrain, your difficult terrain, impassable terrain, and area terrain. So I'm going to read out of this, and then we'll just continue and explaining from there. So for open terrain, most of the battlefield will generally be open terrain. Open terrain neither blocks nor impedes movement. So when you are playing terrain, when you're playing the game, what is classified as open terrain? If there's a area like this, you can see this is open terrain because nothing is going to block or impede movement. Now, if this was more of an angle upward for a hill, you could classify this as difficult terrain. And if it is difficult terrain, what will happen into that is it's going to reduce your movement speed. So difficult terrain reduces your movement speed by 1 to a minimum of 1. So a good example of that would be, so let's just take the rebel commander for the rebel troops, and he is going up here. Now this here is an incline. Now, because of this, can he stand up there like that? No, he's going to fall down. So just say this here is kind of more of a slight incline, and you agree that this is difficult terrain. So because this is difficult terrain, his speed normally is 2. So you would take the range movement tool of your 2. I'm just grabbing it out here. I thought I already had them out, but I guess I don't. Sorry about this, everybody. It kind of adds a little bit more length to the video. So, okay, I got them. So you have your range ruler, which is 2. That is, you can see the 2 dots here. So that is a range ruler movement of 2 because that is the standard movement for the rebel troopers. Now he is on the edge right here. You can't really see him, so let me zoom down a little bit here just so we can see better. That's going to make things a lot easier. Sorry about that. So he's right here, and he's like, I'm going to go up here. So, and when you were talking with the other player, you discussed that this whole thing is difficult terrain. It is different color than what the mat is here. So just say this is difficult terrain. This is what we agreed upon. So normally, for him to go up there, he'd just be able to move with the range of 2. So he would go whoop like that, and that would be his one movement. And then you would move your other troops up unit coherency. But from where you discussed with the player and they said this is all difficult terrain, then what will happen is that your miniature movement will be reduced by 1 to a minimum of 1. So just say he had a movement of 3, it'd be reduced to 2. It would not be reduced to 1. But where he has 2, you're going to take the range ruler 1 instead, because it is reduced, because it is difficult terrain. Then that is how you would correct that for moving on difficult terrain. Now on top of that, just say that his base movement, like Darth Vader, is 1. So just say this was Darth Vader and he had a movement of 1. So therefore, to go on difficult terrain, he's not going to reduce it to 0 so he can't move. You can't do that because you can't reduce it lower than 1. It's a minimum of 1. So that is for the difficult terrain part of this. Just be on the same page with me, and that is, again, I'm stumbling over my words because I'm trying not to hiccup because I'm trying to hold it in. So again, difficult terrain discussed by the other player and yourself. You agree that this whole thing was difficult terrain. So therefore, the original would have a movement of 2, but then it would be reduced to a movement of 1 because it is classified as difficult terrain. Next type of terrain we're talking about is impassable terrain. Again, it is on page 8. And with impassable terrain represents buildings, high walls, wrecked vehicles, deep chasms, and other major impediments. What is considered impassable terrain varies from mini to mini. Trooper minis treat anything higher than the height of their mini to be impassable terrain, while vehicles treat anything higher than half the height of their mini as impassable terrain. A unit cannot perform a standard move or a reverse during which it would overlap impassable terrain. Also too as well, trooper units can often climb or clamber onto it, provided there is a flat surface to place them on, and some units often ignore impassable terrain of a certain height entirely due to specific keywords, allowing them to be placed on top of terrain or move past it. So you can see here in this example, I just read it from the books. You know, it's better just to kind of regurgitate this and just explain it in my very layman terms with my accent and my rambling and everything. So anyhow, you can see there's a tree here. This part here, we just say we agreed upon that this is difficult terrain. And we have Boba Fett, which is right here. Now Boba Fett has a special ability, which in action is called Jump. Jump 2. So what means, if we look at the jump keyword, I'm just going to bring up the keyword here. I'm just looking, and jump, just so we're on the same. Jump X. So in this case, it's Jump 2. Jump over or end on height X or lower. So because Boba Fett has Jump 2, he can do a jump and land on something that is at height 2 or lower. You can see there I added a couple more minis to this just to clarify a little bit more, to make it more clear than mud with my explanations. Anyhow, so Boba Fett, this is difficult terrain, but he's at the base of the tree, and during conversations we discussed with the other player that this tree is impassable terrain. So we have Boba Fett, we have a rebel trooper leader, and we also have the AT-RT, which is here. So with Boba Fett, he has a jump 2. So if we take our range rulers again, as I explained previously, and we hold it up, range 2 is a lot above this. So Boba Fett with his jump 2, as an action, he'd be more than able to do a jump to go up on this tree. Even though it's impassable terrain, he can jump up on top of it. So I'm just gonna move that up just a little bit so we can see Boba Fett. And that is completely legal, not illegal. It is legal, because as long as Boba Fett can stand up there and he has an ability of jump 2, he's going to be able to jump onto it. Plain and simple. So now let's look at this ATRT. Just say the RT is up here and he wants to go on top of that impassable terrain tree. He will not be able to do that. The reason why I say that the ATRT cannot do this is on the ATRT cards, it has the ability which is called Climbing Vehicle. You are treated as a trooper for the purpose of vertical movement. And he also has Expert Climber. While clambering, that's it, do not roll defense dice or suffer wounds. So, again, the reason why he can't do this is by the ruler measurement, it is above range ruler 1. So you can see there at the end of it is here and then it goes to 2. And because of that, on this card it does say for the climbing vehicle, you are treated as a trooper for the purpose of vertical movement. And on page 10 in the rule book, it does give a great explanation of vertical movement. So you have to be in base contact with the object to do your vertical movement. And troopers can only climb up to a height of 1 or lower. They can't go any higher. So because of that, you are treating this ATRT as a trooper. So because you're treating him as a trooper, there's restrictions that it can't go up above range 1. So he would not be able to climb onto this one bit, no matter that he has like a climbing vehicle or expert climber. It don't make a difference because he cannot get up there because he has to be treated as a trooper unit. Also too as well is if by chance, just say hypothetically, this was only at range 1. So it is a height 1 object. You treat him as a unit, a trooper unit, so he can get up the top of it if it was a height 1. Now, because he has expert climber, usually when you're doing you want to do a clamber instead of a climb, you're going to move him up there because you want to get one more action to shoot or what have you. You want to get him up there, so what you would do is normally because you are a trooper unit, you would have to roll dice for each miniature that you are clambering with to get up there. But because he is an expert climber, you will ignore that rule of rolling the white die to see if you're going to get a wound from climbing. So just that's pretty simple for that. So again, Boba Fett, he has jump 2, it is under 2, so he can certainly do that as an action. The ATRT has climbing vehicle and expert climber, but the problem is that you're going to treat him as a trooper unit, so therefore he can only go to a range 1 or lower, and he can't get any higher. Now, this trooper unit right here, so again, difficult terrain, you would reduce the movement to get up there. So for this trooper, you would, instead of a movement of 2 originally, you would do 1. So with 1, he would get base contact. But because he's a trooper unit, he cannot get up here too as well because it is impassable terrain. He can't climb up. If it was at 1, like I said, even though it's impassable terrain and it was at height 1, he'd be able to go on top of it using either the climb action or the clamber action. But this here is a big but. Now, because he had to be in base-to-base contact, he spent 1 action already to get up here. So the only other choice, if this was at range 1, for him to get up there, he would have to do a clamber. So again, you would take the white dice and you'd roll it for each miniature, and as long as you do unit coherency up top, which I'm sure I'd be able to fit all the miniatures up top if it was at level 1. But because he can't do that, he has no choice but to move around the obstacle, or in this case the impassable terrain, because he is restricted to doing anything such as that. On the same page, page 8 of the rule book, we also have, it's called area terrain. And you see there's a chart here for area terrain. Now with the area terrain, the most common type of terrain on the battlefield is area terrain, including woods, tall grass, rivers, and ruined shells of blown out buildings. Area terrain is unique in that it represents a zone of terrain rather than individual objects or pieces of terrain. And There's ways that you can determine the sizes of area terrain. I'm just going to keep continuing on with this part of the book. I found it more important to show you this chart and to read this part out. When determining the size of the area terrain, imagine a zone being at the bottom edge of the terrain and extending straight upward to a point where it's upward to a point parallel with the highest physical feature of the terrain. This creates a three-dimensional, often cylindrical zone that is affected by the area terrain. Any attacks made that fire through or into this zone, even if line of sight is not physically blocked by a feature of this terrain, are subject to effects of the area terrain. So pretty much what that is they do a good example into one of the pages is with the ATRT, you're going to look at the base of the miniature, and then it's going to be as high as the highest point of that miniature, and it's going to make like an imaginary 3D cylinder. So the ATRT will be encompassed into a 3D cylinder. Before we look at this chart, I'll just see if I can find the page and I'll show it to you too as well, because I think it's very important to talk about when we're discussing about terrain and cover. There's the diagram that I was talking about. It's on page 29 in the rulebook if anybody wants to know. It'll be on the same page. And it says there, units as area terrain. When treated as area terrain, the ATRT forms a cylinder zone defined by the edges of the base and the highest point of its miniature. When checking line of sight, a defending mini obscured by this zone will benefit from light cover. So again, it would be classified as light cover. And when I say classified as light cover, so if you're shooting at a miniature that is behind the ATRT, and they would benefit from light cover because, again, you look at the size of the base, the width of the base, and how high the miniature is. So then you would go from the edge, straight line up, so it lines with the highest point of the miniature. So that would create like a invisible 3D cylinder that will give you light cover if you are behind it and they're going to be trying to attack you, like the other players trying to attack you. So just be aware of that. That's what I'm talking about for the unit as area terrain. It explains it really well on page 29. I have it highlighted here, and I also have a whole bunch of other things that we're going to discuss for cover-wise. Now let's go back to the chart so we can still talk about that chart that I had onto the book. So for the area terrain, following this chart here, again, that's on page 8, gives you the type of terrain, the cover type, the type movement, the trooper movement, I should say, ground vehicle movement, and repulsor vehicle movement. So it's really good to refer to this if there's any doubts whatsoever. So just say shallow water, type cover area is none. Trooper movement is difficult, so it will reduce it by 1 for your movement. Difficult for ground vehicles, so again, it will reduce by 1. Again, it's ground vehicles. Repulsor vehicles movement, it's open. And the reason why is because repulsor vehicles, they're not on the ground. They are above the ground. Some of them are hovering like the speeder bike. Some of them are like flying higher. So because of that, it is open. It will not be able to take any difficult terrain where it reduces the movement whatsoever. And again, it's kind of, you can go down like deep water. It's impassable terrain because it's deep, so therefore your trooper can't go through it. Now, impassable terrain and it's deep water, so therefore you can't stand on water, so you just can't go through it. It's impassable. Tall grass, it light cover, and it's open, so you don't have any problems with going through tall grass. And that, again, that's for both troopers, ground vehicles, and repulsor vehicles. Sparse wood jungle, it's light cover and it's all open. Ruins is heavy, difficult, and difficult. So it don't matter if it is a repulsor vehicle or ground vehicle, it is still classified as difficult terrain. Dense woods jungle, heavy, difficult, and impassable. So impassable for repulsor vehicles. And the reason why this is because it is very dense, so you can't kind of fly through it because you'll be hitting into everything and you'll just take damage onto your repulsor vehicle. A really good example of this is if you're familiar with Return of the Jedi, when they were on the moon of Endor and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia is onto the speeder bikes and the scout troopers are trying to get them onto the speeder bikes. You can see the devastation that happened to a lot of the speeder bikes not paying attention where they're going. They run into the big trees and they blow up. Ah! Boom! So that is a really good chart to refer to while you are discussing with your player, with the other player, what is passable, what is difficult terrain, and so on, just so we're aware of that. While we're still looking at the book and a couple of things, I went through the book for cover and terrain and highlight things that I thought would be really good to talk about. And on page 9 of the rulebook, you can see some highlighted stuff here above the barricades. And it does say, when an attacker is checking line of sight, ground vehicles and emplacement troopers are treated as area terrain and can provide cover in this way. So again, we were still talking about the ATRT for the ground vehicles. So it's not just ground vehicles that can give you cover. It's also emplacement troopers. Also too as well is usually the rule of thumb is when you're shooting and you have friendly miniatures in your way, you can still shoot. They're not going to be blocking your line of sight as far as it goes into the book. But again, just remember about the ground vehicles and the emplacement troopers. And it also states a real important fact here. Generally, creatures, emplacement, and walking vehicles with legs provide light cover, while wheeled or threaded vehicles provide heavy cover. So that's kind of a good way to sum everything up. So if it's a creature, emplacement, or walking vehicles with legs, so like the ATRT, it provides light cover. If it has a threaded track or has wheels onto it, it's going to provide heavy cover. And I'm thinking the reason why for this, because with the legs, there's open spots, even though you still consider it as, for area terrain, you consider it as like a 3D cylinder or what have you. It's still going to provide a little bit of blockage to what you're shooting at past it, but you can still shoot it past it. It just will give you light cover because there's opening spots in the legs and so on. But for stuff that has like thread tracks and wheels, there's no real spots between it that you can see good enough. So again, you'll get hard cover for that because it's more difficult to try to shoot between them spaces, because the spaces are a lot smaller, a lot more narrow, as opposed to something with legs that you can shoot through the legs a lot easier. So again, that was a good point to note about for the area terrain, because again, I've come across this when playing the game. Again, I'm still learning, and the whole purpose of this is to teach me as well as everybody else that wants to know about the rules for Star Wars Legion. I came across some points, like I said, where I had the ATRT, I was trying to shoot through it, and it just didn't work for me because I didn't really know all of the rules. But now, hopefully I'm not going to make that mistake anymore because of this. So let's continue on with the cover part now, because I think we covered all the terrain that we need to cover, and we'll jump on to just the cover, like what cover benefits are and everything for the game. On the cover, there's a couple of there's like only two types of cover types, I should say, that are kind of come up in the game, and it's light cover and heavy cover. Now, as a general rule, terrain that blocks line of sight to half or more of the mini placed directly behind it can provide cover to that mini, while terrain that blocks less than half of a mini does not. And I read this little blurb on page 8. It's on the same thing for like additional terrain rules, impassable terrain, and everything too as well. So on page 9, it does talk about barricades. And you can see before you there's some barricades and also a tree right here. And we're going to just talk about this. So you can see more than half the mini is covered. So because of that, then this will provide cover. And they are base contact. I'll just move them over a little bit more. Base contact with the terrain piece. So going from that, I'm just going to read you from the chart here. Barricades are generally high enough for trooper minis to take cover behind, but low enough for them to shoot over. This type of terrain is often found in multiple small segments that can be combined to form defense lines. A lot of the times I've seen videos online on YouTube and everything where people are playing Star Wars Legion, and you have a lot of scatter terrain on the board. So this scatter terrain, what I mean by the scatter terrain on the board is they have like, you know, walls or also barricades, and one of the movements is they try to run up so that they can get directly behind it so that it'll give them hard cover, not light cover, hard cover. And it just helps. This guy here, he's standing here, so this will not give him hard cover. I just put him in there with the tree because there's no way that he'd get hard cover standing beside a tree. Unless somebody was shooting at a different angle, like you can see the angle this way, it's kind of going to be line of sight. And if you looked at a different angle onto it, like more of a 45-degree angle, he is pretty much blocked from that tree. So the line of sight would be obstructed. That's an example, but hell, we're talking about the barricades here. I'm going off subject. So on page 9, there is a list for barricades. So fences don't give any cover type, but it is a difficult terrain for movement for troopers. Ground vehicles, it's open. Repulsor vehicles, it's open. So fences, it's not really going to stop anything. It's not going to provide any cover. It's the only nuisance it's going to be is if you want to cross the fence, you're going to have to reduce your movement speed by 1 to a minimum of 1 to get over it. Just be aware of that. Sandbag. So you can see some people will have like a sandbag wall built that they put onto the terrain. So for sandbags, it is light cover, difficult terrain for trooper movement. It's open though for ground and repulsor vehicles. Because they're a little bigger, they can just kind of walk over it very easily. Low hedges. So little hedges, they're light cover. It's still classified as difficult terrain because it causes a little bit of nuisance to get over it. And it's open for both ground and repulsor vehicles. Low dirt walls is light cover. The cover type is light cover. Trooper movement is difficult and it's open for ground and repulsor. Low stone walls. Like so. It is heavy cover. So it gives you 2 cancellations of dice. And what I'm talking about, heavy cover and light cover. So just say somebody was shooting at this stormtrooper and he's going to have benefit from heavy cover because he's behind. Excuse me, hiccups again. He's behind this stone wall. So he's going to heavy cover, which means that they would roll their defense dice, and that defense dice that they roll, just say that, or not defense dice, the attack dice, the rebels are shooting at the stormtrooper and they roll 4 attack dice. This is just all hypothetical. And they get 2 hits. Well, as long as they're hits, then them 2 would be canceled out because this is heavy cover, which allows you to disregard 2 successes, 2 hits because you have heavy cover. Hope this explains. When we're going over the attacking video and so forth too as well, you'll see about the dice rolling, how to read the dice and everything. But I figured it'd be more important to talk about cover and terrain before we actually get into the more of the meat and potatoes of the game for attacking and moving and everything else, just so everybody will know, like, hey, well, this is supposed to be this. And how can you tell if this is heavy cover? Well, number 1, it's in the book. But number 2 is from talking to your other player, you discuss what is heavy cover, what is light cover, what is difficult terrain, what is impassable terrain, everything, so everybody is on the same page. Like I said previously, I keep repeating this over and over again because it's very important. So anyhow, it gives him heavy cover, so therefore he would be able to disregard 2 successes onto the attack defense dice from the other player. Same goes for the barricade too as well. It is heavy, trooper movement is difficult, and ground vehicle movement is open and open too as well. So all of this is open for ground vehicles, but trooper movement, it is difficult. And as we talked about before for the movement, stormtroopers have a movement of 2 originally. So just say the stormtrooper wanted to move over this way. So there's your 2 movement. Now the problem is, because this is heavy cover and it is difficult terrain, they can't do that. So therefore you would have to actually reduce your movement by 1 to a minimum of 1. So if they had a movement of 3, like Boba Fett has a movement of 3, then it would be reduced to a 2. But again, that's something totally different, but we're talking about Stormtrooper specifically here. So his 2 movement, if he wanted to go over the barricade, would be reduced to a 1 movement, and that's as far as he'd be able to go because it is difficult terrain. And now since it is open terrain now, he could use his 2 for his second movement if he wanted to and move up to his full 2 movement. So that's what I mean about difficult terrain. And so on. And again, for the cover for the stone walls and barricades, this guy would not have cover because it's just, you can see him more than half of that many you can see if you're shooting at him. So that explains that. I just thought it'd be a good idea to put the like heavy covers like a stone wall or barricades and so on, just explain it more and more to make it a little more crystal clear. Hopefully I succeeded and not made it more muddy. Continuing on page 9 in the rulebook, I just want to talk about another thing. I don't have any scattered terrain or board pieces that I can show for this, so I just thought I'd make like a little scenic scene here while I'm talking. And we're going to first talk about holes and trenches. Now with the holes and trenches, it is more like terrain and cover into it. So there's a little tiny chart on the bottom left-hand side in the rule book on page 9, like I said, that shows about the holes and trenches. So for blast holes, you get light cover, it's difficult terrain, and ground repulsor vehicles can just move through it freely. Trenches are heavy cover, difficult terrain, and ground and repulsor vehicles are able to move through it because it's open. Craters is heavy cover that is, difficult terrain, and for ground vehicles it is difficult to go through. So again, with ground vehicles, if it is a crater, they are going to be reduced their movement by 1 to a minimum of 1. Repulsive vehicles, it's still open, they just fly over it, no problem whatsoever. It will not do diddly to them. And not just talking about that, you have like large objects. So large objects are like buildings, moisture collectors, hills, high walls, that have a substantial impact on the environment, often block line of sight and movement completely. So I've got a large wall right here. So if this was placed right there, and you can't really see, but this stormtrooper, I'll move him up a bit, will be like so. That is considered a large object because it blocks line of sight completely. They can't see nothing. So just be on the same page that large objects like buildings, walls, hills like that is going to completely block line of sight. And it does, still on page 9, it does have the chart here for terrain like hills and dunes is light cover, trooper movement is open, ground vehicle movement is open, repulsor is open. For high hedges, provides light cover, it's difficult terrain, impassable for ground vehicles and repulsor vehicles, so they can't even do that. High dirt walls, it's light cover, impassable terrain for trooper movement as well as ground vehicle and repulsor vehicles. High stone walls, ding 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 ding. It is heavy cover, impassable terrain for all 3 troopers, ground, and repulsor vehicles. Buildings is the same. It's heavy cover and it is also impassable terrain for all 3 types. So for trooper movement, ground, and repulsor vehicle movement. So we are on the same page, which is page 9 in the rule book. I just pulled that out. So this know that again, completely block line of sight. And it's good to have a little bit of walls or buildings into your game because it just helps with hiding, and on top of that it just looks so much cooler on the game board. Here we see a lone stormtrooper that has a suppression token. Now, why am I showing this? Well, it's because suppression tokens adds light cover. So even though he's out in the open and you can see him, open line of sight, you take a shot at this stormtrooper and he will have light cover because he has a suppression token. So what that means is that because he has a suppression token, he has light cover. When the other player shoots at him with a range attack, they're able to cancel one of the successful hits from the attack because he has a suppression token. Here's just one more example before we continue on. Now, for this cover, he's behind a barricade and the rebels have shot at this lone stormtrooper. So when they shoot at this lone stormtrooper, they get 3 hits. So 2 of these are hits because of the symbol. Again, we'll talk about dice symbols and everything in a later video, but this is just an example for cover. So because they have 2 successes and 1 critical success, because it has the center of it is gone out, so that's a critical success, and that's 2 hit successes. So he's behind a barricade, which we all know because previously speaking about this, that barricade provides heavy cover. So because of that, you would cancel out 2 hits, and he has 1 left. Now, hypothetically, if they only had 2 successes for the hits, so we got a hit and a critical success, and he's behind hard cover. So you can't cancel both of these out, and the reason being is because critical hits cannot be canceled by cover. They can only be canceled by defense. So if you roll a defense die, which is a shield, or if you got you roll a surge and you got a surge defense ability to turn your surges to shields, it can block a crit. But if you're behind cover, you could only cancel out the hit, even though it's hard cover. That hit would be gone, but you still have this crit left because cover will not cancel out crit results. Again, this is just another example. I think it was pretty important to show this because I know when starting to play the game and I'm rolling this, I was like, well, wait a minute, this I should be able to hit you, or you shouldn't be able to hit me because you only had 2 hits, and cover reduces it by 2 because it's heavy cover. But no, it's only reduces it if you got normal hits. The crits cover will not block because they're critical. On page 29 of the rule book, you see I have a couple of things highlighted because we are talking about cover. So this bottom section is really important. It has a really good amount of information for the cover. Well, the whole book has great information about everything, but I like to read through and highlight things that are very, very important pertaining to what I'm trying to learn. And right now I'm learning terrain and cover. So with this cover, like we said before, there's only 2 types of cover, light and heavy cover. We talked about barricades, we talked about emplacement troopers, and it says emplacement troopers provide light cover to units that they obscure. We talked about that, and we also talked about like the area terrain for like the ATRT and so on too as well. Creature troopers provide light cover to units that are obscured. So again, if you have a trooper unit that is a creature, then they also will provide light cover. Ground vehicles provide light or heavy cover to units that they obscure. Walking or light vehicles provide light cover. Wheeled or threaded vehicles provide heavy cover, which we already talked about. Custom terrain. Minis of the same unit cannot obscure other provided cover to other unit to one another. So minis in the same unit cannot obscure or provide cover to one another. So just be aware of that. Like if you're shooting into a unit of stormtroopers, they can't provide cover. If they're standing in front of another stormtrooper, the unit, it's not going to provide cover for them. So that's a good thing to note. During the applied dodge and cover step of a range attack, a unit that has light cover can cancel 1 hit result, and a unit that has heavy cover can cancel up to 2 hit results. We talked about that, and we just discussed about the critical hits. Critical results cannot be canceled by cover. Various game effects such as suppression tokens and cover keywords may improve a unit's cover by 1 or more. When a unit that does not have cover improves its cover by 1, it is treated as having light cover. When a unit that does not have cover improves its cover by 2 or more, it is treated as having heavy cover. So the reason why I'm pointing this out again, it's very important, and also they talked about keywords. So we're going to go over keywords and everything else in a different video, but just so we can just briefly touch upon this, that there's some keywords, they interact with terrain and cover and so forth. I'm just going to read off a couple of them. This here was one of Richard's comments that he made in his email, which was very important, and thank you for that again, Richard. And I just want to read word for word of what he said, since we're on this fact about keywords and everything. So, blast keyword. It is a weapon keyword. Weapons with blast ignore cover. So if you're shooting at a unit that is having cover and you have the blast keyword, they're not going to benefit from any cover because it is a blast. Expert climber. When this unit uses the clamor action, it does not roll dice or suffer wounds. And we talked about this again because the ATRT is an expert climber. So if they choose to do a clamor, then you don't have to roll the white dice for it. They just are going to do it. Unhindered is another one. The unit ignores the effect of difficult terrain. So if you have a unit and has a keyword of unhindered, I think the Wookiee warriors have that, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the card in front of me, so I'm not 100% sure. But if they go over difficult terrain, where difficult terrain will reduce your movement by 1 to a minimum of 1, and they have the hindered keyword, it's not going to happen. They just move freely because they're agile enough to just go over difficult terrain. Very simple. Grounded. A unit cannot climb or clamor. So therefore, if you have the grounded keyword, you're not going to be able to climb or clamor anything. So you're just going to have to go around any of the difficult terrain or impassable terrain. Let me see here. Oh, hover. So another keyword is hover. So ground-breaking units can ignore terrain, usually up to its height. So like hover 1, hover 2, or just like that. It's the same as like for jump 1, jump 2. You know, but with hover you can ignore terrain to a certain height. But we talked about Boba Fett for the jump, that you can go up on terrain to a certain height. So Boba Fett again has jump 2, so he'd be able to go up to an object of 2 or lower. And that's for jump X, which is the same thing. So jump 2, jump 1, whatever. Scale is another keyword. Combines unhindered and expert climber. Also allows a unit to clamor as a free action before or after a move. That is a very good thing to know. And sharpshooter X. X means if you have like sharpshooter 1, sharpshooter 2, or what have you for that, it reduces the target cover by that amount. So if you have a miniature that has sharpshooter 2, and they are behind a stone wall that gives them heavy cover, which is 2, you're going to ignore the heavy cover because you have sharpshooter 2, so you can shoot, and whatever you roll, they can't drop it off unless they have a special card that will let them do that. So that's a good thing to note about the keywords. Here we see an example that comes up a lot. Well, it came up a lot during my gameplay. And I'm going off of the explanation on page 30 for terrain and cover. So we have a total unit of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 units, or 6 miniatures in the unit of this Rebel Troopers. And just say that somebody was shooting at them like the Stormtroopers or ATRT or what have you. Now, because you have 1, 2, 3 that are out in the open, but you also have 1, 2, 3 that are behind cover. One is completely obscured because you can't see him because of the line of sight. The wall is blocking him. But these two and that one, it's still counted as cover, are behind heavy cover. These 3 units, these 3 minis that are out in the open will still benefit from heavy cover. And the reason being is because if at least half or more of your unit is behind cover, whether it is light cover or heavy cover, then all of your miniatures in your unit will benefit from the cover. But just say, for instance, I know this is out of coherence, but this is an example. You have 4 that is out into the open when there's 2 that is in cover. They would not benefit from the cover because half is open, so therefore they'd have to be, I'm kind of back in talkers here, sorry about that. So if the 4 were open out of a 6 miniature unit, then it wouldn't benefit. If 3 or more is behind cover, which you see here, they'd benefit from the cover effects. So again, if more than half or more is behind cover, then your whole unit will benefit from that cover. That it is all written on page 30. Now, another thing that's really important to talk about here is if they were shooting, now he's complete, just this unit, this miniature here is completely out of line of sight. So because the line of sight is totally blocked, the rebel trooper can't be defeated, even if this unit suffers 5 or more wounds. So if they rolled and got 5 or more wounds, the unit's still going to be alive because he is not able to be seen. He can't even be shot at because he's behind the wall. So because of that, your unit would be wiped out, except for the one behind the wall, because even no matter how many hits you rolled, he can't be seen. He is obscured. This guy right here. So what you do is you would take, but the unit leader would be dead, but because unit leader is the last to go, you would just replace him with the unit leader in that spot. And that's how that works for the cover. So if one of your miniatures are completely obscured from the shot, from the range attack, and the attack dice rolled are going to be more than enough to wipe out your whole unit, it is still not going to be wiped out because the one miniature is obscured completely from line of sight. So then you would take them all out and you would take your unit leader and replace it with the one that was obscured out of sight, because your unit leader is always the last miniature to come off out of the unit. So just be aware of that. I did not know that about, you know, if it's completely out of line of sight, because that's going to change some tactics when I do play the game, that I could possibly hide one if I know they're just going to get hit and they're going to be obliterated. Keep one out of line of sight so at least the unit commander will survive. I'm struggling with hiccups again more and more. Jeez, this is another example. This is taken exactly at the book on page 31, and this is for checking of line of sight to determine the cover. Now, you can see here that the ATST is fixed on shooting these rebels, this rebel unit, and they have a barricade in front of them. Now, let's just grab this stormtrooper and put it here, just as part of this example. You can't even see the stormtrooper where I put it. There we go. So the stormtrooper is going to shoot first on their activation. So because there is cover here, heavy cover, and the stormtrooper is shooting over it, then there are going to be some heavy cover bonuses that the rebels will have so that they cancel out 2 of the hits, not crits, but hits. So that is the example, but now we're going to talk about the ATST and attacking it, but I'm just going to change the camera angle. Again, there's a nice little diagram for this on page 31. I'm just going to physically show it with my camera, so I'm just going to change the camera angle here. You can see here the camera angle has changed, so now it is the ATST's turn to shoot at the rebel troopers. Now you can see you go from the highest point, which is going to be right here from the ATST miniature. So this is the highest point. This gun's supposed to be like that. But anyhow, the highest point, which is right here, and you have to go from the center of the base. So you can't even see the barricade that is down there. And because the line of sight is not obscured one little bit, what's going to happen is that when it shoots at the rebel troopers, they're not going to get a hard cover bonus because the barricade is not obscuring the line of sight of the ATST. So because of that, that just explains it right there. I'm just trying to get there we go. We're trying to get the rebel troopers in focus there. So with the rebel troopers, they are not going to benefit from the hard cover because drawing a line of sight from the center of the base, you can see here, whoops. So the center of the base to that, the ATSC has pure line of sight and they can whack at the rebel troopers. Now, if we move this barricade back, like so. There we go. So if we move the barricade back like that, then the rebel troopers will definitely have hard cover, because drawing the imaginary line from the center of the highest point, the center base of the ATST, going down to the rebel troopers, it is being obscured because it crosses the barricade, then they would benefit from the hard cover. So this great little diagram, like I said, on page 31 for checking line of sight to determine cover. I strongly urge you to go to that page and check it out, because I've come across this into the game a few times, not a lot of times, because I didn't play the game that much, but I come across this, and because of that, this diagram will help you out immensely, because it is awesome, just like the game. Well, there you have it, Board Game Maniacs. That ends this video for the Learning the Rules of Star Wars Legion, where we covered both terrain and cover. I hope I didn't miss anything or didn't mess anything up, but if I did mess something up, please comment down below, timestamp the video, refer to a page number out of that specific rule book, and give a brief little explanation of how I messed it up and what I should have said or should have done differently. And if I missed anything at all that is pertaining to cover and terrain, please comment down below and let me, as well as all the other viewers that are going to watch this, know too as well, because this is all very important. This game I thoroughly enjoy, and I'm going to be playing it a lot on the channel. But before I start getting into playing more games with this, I want to make sure that I have the rules down as tight as possible, so I make very little rules mistakes. But again, because of all the viewers such as yourself out there, you're helping me, you're helping everybody else learn this fabulous game that Fantasy Flight Games have created. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you know, I feel you, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and you just get totally immersed into this game and you want to play it a lot. You want to paint more miniatures for it whenever they release other stuff, and you want to make the terrain so it makes a really cool looking game board. You have your friends over and play it. So again, it's a phenomenal game. I can't say too many, I can't say enough about how good this game is what I was trying to say, not too many negative things, because I don't really have many negative things or any negative things that I can think of right now about this game, except for I don't have enough minis. I want more minis. I want like a full AT miniature to come out, because that would be awesome to play. I have one, but it's from the Star Wars in the 80s, the toys, but I'm going to convert that in some way to include into a terrain piece. I can't wait to do that. I'm probably going to shoot a video onto it just to have it and have it done and show you how cool it is, because it's going to be awesome. But in either case, I'm starting to ramble again. So again, one suggestion I would make is go and find out find a printout for all the keywords, because that's going to save you a lot too as well when you're trying to find what keywords are. I think there's one actual one that's on BoardGameGeek.com. Look up Star Wars Legion, and you'll find like some files there about keywords for Legion that you can print out. Really, really good, really helpful. It's going to save a lot of time too as well. And again, just remember, if I miss anything, just let me know. Let me know what do you think about these learning videos? Are they helping you with the game? Or is it enticing you to want to play the game, to get the game and play it? And even for the veterans out there, like, let me know how close I am to the rules. I am reading it right at the book, and I do have a veteran player helping me. And hats off to you there, Richard Osborne. Again, can't say thank you enough for helping me out with this, because it is definitely worth its weight in gold for helping me and all the other viewers out there. So thank you again, Richard, for that. I appreciate it very much. I'm going to keep praising you up, because you deserve the praise for helping us out. And that's my spiel. That's the end of it. So just remember, if COVID is still out there, be safe. Think of others' safety as well as your own and your family's, obviously. And just be smart about the whole thing, because you want to make sure that you are protected. And by protecting others around you, and everybody does that, it's just going to make it even better, and less spread is going to happen, and we'll beat this COVID if we haven't already when this video is released. So thank you very much. We'll see you in the next learning video. And until then, be a maniac. See you next time. Bye-bye. Boo.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to keep up to date with Board Game Maniacs, click on the like and subscribe button to be notified when more videos come available. If you want to become an official sponsor of Board Game Maniacs, go to patreon.com/BoardGameManiacs. Or you can go to streamlabs.com/BoardGameManiacs1. That's right, and you can donate to help keep the lights on, keep food in our bellies, and play more games. We'll purchase more games, more equipment to make Board Game Maniacs evolve and get bigger and larger. Because of you, the viewers, I thank you from the bottom of my toes to the top of my head for all of your support. And until next time, Board Game Maniacs, be a maniac.